Good morning, sisters. Welcome to episode 5 of our Provident Living. This week we're going to talk a little bit about ideas of what to store. I had a sister ask me or just mention she wished people would just put out a checklist. And there are checklists out there if you want to look for them. Once again, I'm back to my theme of everybody needs to do this individually and individualize it for you and your family. So I can give you ideas. But as we get going, I think you'll see why one size doesn't fit all. So we're going to start this week with, I know we've harped on food a lot. That's really your most important and basic thing. There are other things that we will talk about. Next week, we'll kind of talk about odds and ends, things around the house, things you might not think that you have to store. But this week, we're going to stick with the food one more time. Okay, so I made a list as requested. And we'll talk a little bit about it. So grains, rice, and pasta. That's kind of a given, but what you may not know is that wheat is really hard for elderly and young children and babies to digest. So a really good alternative to that is quinoa, Q-U-I-N-O-N. Not sure if I'm saying that right, quinoa. But that doesn't have a long storage shelf. A long storage life. I used to have some in my storage. I think we cooked with it a couple of times. It does take some getting used to. It wasn't something we loved, but I think that we just did the bare basics with it. Didn't know how to cook with it, but it didn't, before I could really get into it, I had to check what I had. So I haven't stored any of that, but then in my house, we don't have that problem yet. So we just go with the wheat. Now, once you take the wheat and put it into flour form, it does not store nearly as long as the wheat. But if you're going to have wheat on hand, you need to have something to process that with. Otherwise, you're just going to have wheat berries, which is when you boil them and they just puff up, and which you're going to get really tired of and not as versatile as flour. So you need to have some way to grind that. Now, keep in mind, we're planning, I hope everybody's thinking this way, of not having any electricity. So a hand grinder is going to get you some flour. It does not get you as fine a flour as an electric grinder, an electric mill. But having both on hand might not be a bad idea. We don't know. I hope you have electricity, but you may not. And maybe you can't afford the electricity. I mean, who knows what we're headed to. So, or what you are individually. And that's why everybody needs to be a little individualistic. Now, there's ways to power things. There's power sources out there. We'll talk about that on another day. That, you know, if you don't have electricity, you could make some of these things work. Okay, moving on. Fruits and juices. Oh, let's go back to the rice really quick. So white rice is going to store your longest versus the brown rice. But, of course, those of you who are, you know, really interested in the nutrition, if you can use up that brown rice, that's a good thing to have on hand, too. I would recommend both. Fruits and juices. Once again, I go back to the varieties. So on your fruits, you can have the canned fruit, like the pineapple greens at the store. Once again, you have liquids with that. You can do the dehydrated, which would be like the fruit leathers. They don't have a long storage life, but not a bad thing to have on hand. Or you can do the freeze-dried, but then again, to reconstitute them. And you know what? Freeze-dried is great just to eat as a snack. So not a bad thing to have on hand. That would be a great snack. Vegetables, that's kind of a given. Something we don't think about that I don't think I listed on here is seeds. Now, last year, there was a big panic, and I have to admit, we just moved a few months before that, and so gardening was kind of not at the forefront of what we were thinking about. And we went to the store to get some seeds, and seeds were gone. You couldn't find them. So I'm just telling you, they're in the stores right now. Maybe go get you some right now. Seeds store best if they're kept in cool, dry places. Actually, the very best place to store them is either the freezer or the fridge. And you'll get 2 to 3 times the life out of them as you would if you just have them somewhere in a room. And then there are different kinds of seeds. I wish I put that on there. So the hybrid seeds, which is mostly what's at the stores, you have to go or order specialty seeds. The hybrid seeds are the ones that they tinker with. So they combine this with that to make it the color better or the flavor better or the longevity of the produce or production better. But if you were to take the seeds and harvest them at the end of the year and try to replant them, you're going to have really nasty stuff. So, I mean, sometimes literally they'll mix squash with tomatoes. It's just odd what you'll end up with, and kind of pretty much inedible. So if you're going to harvest the seeds, you need the heirloom or antique seeds. And these are the old-fashioned ones, and they're not going to be as resistant to disease, or maybe not as yummy, or maybe not as productive, I don't know. But they can be harvested, the seeds, and replanted year after year. So that's a thought. Okay, dairy. Dairy doesn't last a whole long time because of the fats in it, but super important to have on hand. You can get freeze-dried cheeses and freeze-dried butter and all kinds of things, so that's an option. They are expensive. Spices and seasonings. If you don't cook and you're thinking of cooking, or you're planning for having to cook, think about all the things that you would like to fix or normally fix, and then make sure you have on hand what you need for that. Or not fix, but what you like to eat. So if you love, I don't know, Costa Vida, maybe you ought to look into what spices are in that, so you can make that at home when you have to. Okay, proteins and meats. This would be like your beans and your peanut butters and your meats and nuts, things like that. Now, anything with oils and meats, of course, don't last quite as long as other things. So try to get a variety in many ways with that. Even though we may have to go without electricity, I would still suggest that you keep your freezers and fridges full, especially your freezers, because you don't have to. Sorry about that. Didn't turn off my phone. And after that, the phone will ring. And I'm not redoing this again, so you guys just listen to my phone. Condiments and oils. So this would be like your ketchups, your mustards, your salad dressings, your mayonnaise, your vegetable oil. Now keep in mind, oils do not last great. They don't. When they say that they have a limited time on them, they mean it. So, sorry, turn that up. So I actually just had to check one in my cupboard, some canola oil that literally is only about 2-3 months past the date on the bottle. And it had already, I mean, you can tell when they're bad. They stink. The bottle kind of gets distorted. It's crazy. So quick fixes. These are going to be things like, oh gosh, macaroni and cheese, or I can't think of the name. The little fix-it meals that you just add water that are on the shelf. These are your fast food in an emergency situation or a crisis situation. Comfort foods, again, if you're in a crisis situation, a little bit of chocolate can really help. There's the other phone. It's just a great idea to have on hand, especially if you have young kids. Everybody's stressed out in a time of crisis or emergency, and sometimes these comfort things can really be reassuring or calming or just helpful. Water's big. We will do a thing just on water down the road and water storage. But keep in mind that what you store in that variety is also going to give you some liquids to have on hand to cook with if need be. Okay, pets. We don't often think of pets. Now, I do have a dog, so I just kind of quickly, so it's nothing scientific, but went through the grocery store and just kind of looked at the dry food versus the canned food. And in most instances, the canned food had a longer shelf life date on it than the dry food. I think that's because of the amount of oils in the dry food, and they're going to go rancid and bad. So that's something to think about if you have pets and they really are important to you. Babies, same thing. One of the things we don't think about, which is not a food item, but is diapers. You cannot store enough diapers, disposable diapers. So maybe have on hand those old-fashioned lovely cloth diapers. Recipes, last one. We will be doing down the road, in place of this, maybe just putting out some recipes that include some of the food storage items that you might get. But I am just planning for the worst at my house. I still have a lot of paper recipes, a lot of recipe books, a lot of recipes on hand. rather than rely on the internet. I just don't know if we'll have that capability. So therefore, all of your recipes could be gone in a second. All right, ladies, that's it. Got to keep to the time. So I will see you next week with another list. You guys have a great week. Keep getting that food storage. Bye-bye.